As the world discovers industrial weapons of war, the game changes forever. Superpowers consolidate, and underdogs fight for survival and glory. This is the Civilization Battle Royale X, Season 4, Episode 28. When I say war, you say more. Hello folks, I am once again Platon of Glaucon 4. I will be your guide through the occurrences on the cylinder this week. It seems like an especially bloody one, so make sure you've brought an umbrella, as the first 3 rows will get wet. Our first OC is, as ever, our fantastic community map. I echo my sentiments from my last narration, that I'd like this map even more if it didn't insist on depicting Machnovia's borders so realistically. But overall, it is a laudable effort, and a great help to us all in understanding the geopolitics of the game. To make a change this week, I'm highlighting the updated Leovigild Civ Ball. I'm assuming the fungus on his head is some kind of parasitic organism native to Asturica that is compelling him to send wave after wave of his own men to die, whilst utterly failing to recapture the city and its mind control mushrooms. The Ko-Fi slide has recruited the great musician Bob Geldof, best known for being a Boomtown rat, and a key part of the Band-Aid concerts to bring you this message. For heaven's sake, just give us your effing money. In this slide, we take a look at last episode's biggest losers, Shang. After waking up and looking like they might do something against Mongolia, they immediately remortgaged all their cities and collapsed under a wave of Gogurt. You had me going for a second there, Daji. We open on a bleak shot of the remaining Mamluk territory. Idris Alama has ordered the Kanem-Bornu generals to construct fortifications outside the walls of the city to support the siege. This aggressive citadelling has forced most of the remaining defenders into the Red Sea, where their bloody corpses threaten to stain the water the color of its name. To make matters worse, Idris makes peace with Pontus, meaning a capture of Damietta would be much more likely to stick. Furthermore, the Dzungars make peace with the Seljuks in order to join a coalition against Shajar al-Dur, along with the Visigoths and Alawites. Pontus, at a loss for anything better to do, declares war on the Osage. The next logical stopping point on this world tour of war is Central Asia, to inspect the aftermath of the Seljuks versus Dzungars. Almiak and Astan return to Vonya, along with the Dzungar city of Manas, but the former Kazakhstani capital of Almaty stays with Galdan Khan. This opens up a small corridor from which further attacks can be staged against Bukhara, or if Galdan feels brave, Kazan. The big news here is that the movement to end Mamluk grows, adding the armies of the Asharids, Bukhara, Machnovia, the Seljuks, and, most worryingly for Shajar al-Dur, Pontus to their number. Saba de Emet also DOW the Kalmyks, but with no direct line of attack, this is unlikely to come to much. The SEA and Oceanic nations are also interested in the potential of Africa, and send exploratory expeditions to test the waters. Nungar are best represented and have dealt damage to the Mogadishawi city of Al-Digle, but their ships are scattered far and wide in this slide, and seem to lack in overall command. Zhenge also makes a half-hearted attempt to capture the city, mainly for laughs. Their sailors take pot shots at the settlement, crying out, "Aww," for misses, and "Digle" for hits. Unfortunately, Koshinga doesn't seem to have moved past his strategy of only sending frigates to attack islands. The one melee vessel within striking range is currently surrounded by a hostile Palawa flotilla, and as such, unless the Zheng troops to the northwest are able to skirt the Palawa ships and engage, it looks like the city will stay with Abu Bakr ibn Umar, for now. The war declarations keep rolling, this time in North America, where a multilateral conflict has broken out. The aggressors, led by the Yellowknives, are the Umesami, the Finns, the Faroes, Wagi, and Latvia. This bloc begins a joint operation against the Osage, while the Yellowknives throw caution to the wind and declare a simultaneous war against a weakened Pueblo as they launch a serious bid for North American hegemony. Unlike its northern counterpart, South America already has plenty of juicy wars in progress. Notably, the continued Bora Bora conquest of the continent supported this time by Ecuador, both of whom are making progress against Tiwanaku. Bora Bora have set up rough siege positions outside the cities of Alegrete in the southeast, Atacama in the southwest, and Pocotia betwixt the two. They have not dealt any significant damage yet, but the defenders are few, so it may only be a matter of time. In the north, Ecuador slams walls of outdated melee units into the walls of Pariti and Pucará. The approach is difficult, slowing reinforcements, so it remains to be seen how effective this will be in the long run. Of small note, Vijayanagara joined the movement to end Mamluk. A solitary Ikko cannoneer watches on and sheds a single tear as the Goguryeo mounted divisions fall upon Anyang. He had watched thousands of his compatriots die in the outskirts of the city in previous campaigns, all for naught. Ikko Iki blood and burned bone fertilized the soil of this Shang city for centuries, but now those bountiful fields look sure to be inherited by Guangai To, not Kenyo. Welcome to your cartographical intermission. Don't spend too long studying this map as it will be ripped up and redrawn by the end of the episode. Our three strongest religions are currently Kachina in North America, Vajrayana in Central and South Asia, and Jodo Shinshu in Northeast Asia. These were founded by Pueblo, the Kalmyks, and Ikko Iki respectively. I guess that just goes to show, no god can save you from the horror of eternal war. The English strike the decisive blow in the mustard wars, capturing Dijon to prove that Coleman's English mustard is, in fact, the preeminent condiment of Europe. Soldiers flood the streets of the former Burgundian capital, trashing pubs and bars and chanting, "Here we go, here we go, here we go." A lancer unit, known as the 1st Berries Regiment, blocked the last remaining Burgundian troops from recapturing the city. As the opposing longswordsmen struggle to scramble up the hills to the south, they can hear the Berries' war song drifting through the valleys. You only sing when you're winning, you only sing when you're winning. Ludwig of Bavaria, noting the new neighbors next door, joins the anti-Mamluk coalition in a bid to secure a holiday home far from these foreign hooligans. An Islamic contingent consisting of Eswatini, Sabah Emet, the Mogadishu, and the Mamluks join Operation Osage. This prompts Ndongo to declare war on Mamluks, presumably as their coalition invite got lost in the post. Finishing off the sidebar roundup, Mongolia makes peace with the Mamluks, and Kalmyk makes peace with Sierra Leone. Unrelated to all this is the main focus of this shot, the Vijayanagaran great musician Elis Regina. Born in our Brazil, she blended various common styles of Brazilian music into a pop synthesis. She also spoke out against military rule in the country whilst touring in Europe. Perhaps on the cylinder she could tour neutral Singapore and vent her frustrations there. After ending hostilities with the Kalmyks, Thomas Peters of Sierra Leone begins to contemplate the futility of war in general. In his experience, war is tough, costly, slow, and in some cases downright embarrassing. He decides to make peace with the Alawites, leaving them in control of their capital Meknes, and nothing else. Ismail ibn Sharif rubs his hands together as he thinks about the Kasbahs he will build in his remaining desert. The meta is about to change. In all seriousness, this is a bad sign for Sierra Leone. They have been at war for many parts and sent countless units to an early grave for the most meager of rewards. This peace will save them an elimination penalty and allow them time to rebuild an army before there are reprisals. But make no mistake, the world has seen their weakness and has taken note. A burly man and his young companion are ushered into the audience chamber of Eustace. "What brings you humble strangers to this place of exquisite grandeur?" demands the immortal. "Well, big yin, I've got a banger of a deal for yourself," begins the big man in a thick Scottish brogue. "Do you ken of a place called Poyais?" Gregor MacGregor makes a peace deal with Tiwanaku from beyond the grave. He promises rich lands to Eustace in return. Eustace grants his fellow immortal safe passage south, as the quest for the submarine continues. Also, Kanem Bornu rage quit the movement to end Mamluk. They claim it has got too popular now and sold out its original principles. Secretly, Idris Alama fears the reprisals of successfully taking the final city and decides to let one of his allies reap the benefits of the reasonably successful Kanem push. His enemy now devoid of tactical mustered reserves, Henry agrees to make peace with Charles. Leovigild also pieces out on his war with Burgundy, as his forces finally have Asturica surrounded and down to the red, and recapturing it will take his full concentration. Pahuska of the Osage is still determined to get his hands on the formerly Floridian beachfront condos at all costs. His overstretched army ignores the threats to the west and pushes into St. Augustine, bringing the city to half health. As per his agreement with the departed scam artist, he will liberate the city if successful, but crucially, control of the property portfolio will pass to the Osage. To the north of St. Augustine, a musician called Jerry forms a band known as the Grateful Dead. It is rumored that the name is an allusion to the millions who have died fighting over the city, and the thousands more who will meet the same fate in conflicts to come. Pueblo decide that with the Yellowknives already at the gates of Oheki Owinge, taking uncoordinated potshots at the underdefended Osage capital has lost its luster, and make peace. This allows Pahuska to snag St. Augustine, but contrary to his deal with the devil, he hangs on to the city and its beachfront properties. He figures that Gregor MacGregor can't hurt him now, but a reckoning will await when he eventually arrives on the Great Sub in the south. A great writer appears in Osage. He is Hugo Pratt, an Italian cartoonist whose interest in war stories has brought him to this city of great upheaval. He feels Gregor MacGregor, a charismatic but flawed man, would make for the perfect protagonist for his latest series. In the northwest, we can see Patufic has healed up a little and replenished its navy. The Pahuska are unlikely to add this one to their burgeoning portfolio. The Dzungars make peace with Nivkh, and we get a shot of their expanded core. The western half has a fairly healthy carpet, including some of Galdan Khan's UU, the Ulanzalata, a lancer replacement that gains extra movement from starting on hills. The newly conquered lands at the north of the Indian subcontinent, less so, and these borders are beset with enemies that could easily rival Galdan's power. We return to Selkup lands where their carpet is no denser than their Dzungar rivals. However, it is about half an era more advanced. This could be the clincher if round 2 comes soon. We seem to have seen fewer early carpets this season. However, as Vonya is the latest leader to pick autocracy as an ideology, we may see this start to change as the cylinder advances into the industrial era and beyond. Tuli declare war on Bukhara, but it's largely symbolic. To completely contradict my previous entry, we are treated to a shot of the finest carpet on the map, that of Royal Hungary. Somehow Bathory has managed to fill all but one tile of her empire with a defender. Granted, that's only 16 units, but at least she's trying. You know what to do, Nestor. Bavaria recruits Hibari Misora, a pioneering Japanese jazz singer and actress. Effing weebs. The ongoing conflict in Tiwanaku highlights two very distinct strategies for conquest. In the south, Bora Bora have deployed a mixed army of siege weapons protected by infantry, which has successfully brought Alegrete to the black. In the north, Ecuador simultaneously slams legions of poorly equipped horse and soldiers into the cities of Ojo, Pariti, and Pucará, to limited effect. In Iberia and its surroundings, things are not looking great for the Visigoths. Racopolis is hovering around capture range, and there are smatterings of English and Faroese ships which could achieve this feat pretty easily. Granted, the English flotilla seems more interested in Emerita, which, barring divine intervention, will probably fall next turn. Leovigild is still making motions towards Asturica, but it seems that the distance his troops are from the city is inversely proportional to how damaged the city is. Mongolia maintains a modest presence in Shang lands, but Goguryeo intends to go all the way south. They secure Anyang, much to the chagrin of the Iko Iki canon, still providing a captive audience for how to conquer Anyang good. Yingzhou also falls, ceding even more luxury resources to Guanggaito, which will allow him to continue his conquests without the fear of a domestic rebellion. In stark contrast, half of the remaining Shang cities are in resistance, and functionally unable to slow the autocrat's advance. In the converted barn outside Huliapol that served as the headquarters of the Machnovist movement since the recorded history of the cylinder began, Nestor Machno is reading a stack of papers by candlelight. Ensor sums up and concentrates certain principles which are considered to be anarchistic. In short, Ensor is a dangerous person who has great changes. He is consequently marked for blows. It is at him that all the harquebuses are aimed. It is on his head that are dumped the most aromatic containers of the so-called serious critics. He is reading a review by a critic called Octave Maus, and the words resonate. "Bring him in," he calls over his shoulder to Alexei. The boy dutifully exits the barn and returns a few minutes later with the artist. "Greetings, Comrade Ensor. I have heard much of your prowess. I wish to offer you a commission." Machno gestures to the seat opposite him at the candlelit table. James sits and takes the offered drink, toasting Machno. "This is a great honor, Batko Machno. What do you require of me?" inquires the artist. "Your first task will be to create a portrait of the nefarious and malodorous monk known as Grigory Rasputin. He has absconded with the bulk of my forces, leading them on some theocratic quest to what he calls Russia. I need a wanted poster that can be distributed far and wide, using the advancements we have made in mobilized print." Louis Daguerre, born in occupied France, brings his talents to the English. He has created a new form of camera capable of creating a quick exposure. This cutting-edge technology is employed by English merchants to create funny scenes to which inscriptions are added, to be sold in gift shops across the empire. The idea is that they will be used to convey messages between friends and family distributed by the newly formed English Postal Service. Best-selling postcards include a portrait of a Burgundian woman encaptioned "Wish You Were Her," a picture of a family on a beach reading "Greetings from Autun," and a Bristolian cityscape titled "At Least It's Not Lincoln." On the continent, several English generals approach the border of Burgundy and the Bavarian Empire. They are looking to assess the enemy fortifications to the west, and, if necessary, respond in kind. Thomas Peters makes peace with Abu Bakr ibn Umar. They don't call him the diplomat for nothing. It's a bad turn to be Bukhara. The Finns, Ume-Sami, Faroes, Kazan, and Latvia all declare war against them. Granted, only Kazan can actually reach them, unless they allow their allies open borders, but Kazan are more than powerful enough to do significant damage to Bukhara without much backup. The Bukharan exclave, not pictured, shares a significant border and lacks any means of resupply. This could be an easy win for Mohammad Amin. Pahlawa decide to get involved in the movement to end Mamluk, probably because there is no conceivable way that this war could backfire on them, and that would make a nice change. Pontus declares war on the Ume-Sami, and upon seeing the great army mobilize once more, the Machnovist troops immediately take up arms and head to Ekaterinoslav. When they reach the outskirts of the city, they are surprised that the Pontic army does not immediately open fire on them. Instead, one of the soldiers shouts across, "Have you come to help with the war effort against the Ume-Sami?" Embarrassed, the Machnovian troops shuffle their feet and mumble amongst themselves until one calls back, "Yeah, that's right. War with the Sami." Pontus and Machno reunited, and it feels so good. Singapore makes peace with Mexico to try to create a little balance. Despite also having the Osage to contend with, the Yellowknives continue to bring down the defenses of Oke-Owinge. To the south, Popeye has a slightly stronger force than the Yellowknives have committed to the embattled city, but they are scattered away from the main road connecting Pueblo territory and will take a couple more turns to arrive on the front line. In the west, the situation is even worse for the defenders, as Yellowknives cavalry charge from their corps into Tetsuge-Owinge and towards the capital, Taos. Unsurprisingly, Zheng picks autocracy. They have shown a propensity towards conquest and are doubtless under some degree of cultural influence from their early adopter neighbor Goguryeo. This is more bad news for Iko-Iki, as one of the few order adopters. They now have a powerful opposing bloc that threatens to engulf their borders. In the Singapore city of Pai Nguyen, a young girl has been elevated to the rank of general after reports that she has spoken to God and seen a vision of a great military victory. Wagi planes, stationed in Lamitan, fly over the city to observe the great celebratory parade. From their seats in the sky, the pilots see no gods, and flying unopposed, they laugh at the idea that this victory could come at their expense. We return to Central South America to learn that Puni of Bora Bora was indeed the more cunning tactician of the coalition partners. His troops have seized Alegrete, and whilst it looks likely to flip at least once more, there now seems a good chance that this city will end up part of the Bora-Boran Empire. The mountainous city of Atacama is now also taking damage, as more reinforcements arrive from the Bora Bora Cora Cora. In the north, Gabriel Moreno stands behind hordes of conscripts, urging them forward as they give their lives for minimal damage to the city of Pucará. In Iberia, Emerita is now English. It looks likely we'll see a few flips, and it's hard to call an eventual winner at this stage. Racopolis is deep in the red, and there are still a few strong Faroese units capable of dealing a death blow in the area. Asturica continues to elude Leovigild. Mexico joins the Autocracy Club, and that's all I've got to say about that. The real news here is that St. Augustine appears to be back in Taino hands, flipped with no fanfare. Mogadishu makes peace with Singapore and Nungar, and not a moment too soon, as there is evidence of recent naval skirmishes on this slide. The Nungar Navy is more numerous, but Singapore's sole representative is a truly terrifying cruiser. This Enlightenment-era bonus boat has 45 ranged combat, and bridges the gap between frigates and battleships. This looks like a good result for Abu Bakr ibn Umar. He can't afford to be throwing ships away in ocean battles when there are many powerful rivals on his own shores. Have I mentioned that they call him the Diplomat? The Eswatini city of Big Bend may be the next Fort Ndongo's Butcher's Bill. The city is down to the yellow, but the ships harrying its shores are being contained by Eswatini privateers, and the besieging land army are fighting the terrain as much as the defenders. Make no mistake, this city could fall, but it will take a little more commitment from Ana Nzinga to tip the scales. The current state of the Shang Empire is captured in microcosm by this shot of foxes frolicking on top of a mountain. They are elevated above their station, no one knows how they got there, they don't have a clue what they're doing, and around them everything is on fire. Eagle-eyed readers or viewers may have noticed that the real scoop here can only be seen via the minimap. Yep, Pontus is closing in on a kill. The final Mamluk city of Damietta has flipped, and now flipped back. Pontus has a huge navy and a smattering of land units in the Red Sea that means short of an immediate peace treaty, we are about to witness our next elimination. Back in North America, the Yellowknives are forging a warpath deep into Pueblo territory. The core city of Tetsuge Owinge has been surrounded, captured, and put to the torch. There are only a couple of mounted units between the aggressors and Pope's capital. Will they be able to hold back the advancing horde? The naval battle off Oregon isn't going great for the Browntown Civ. The Yellowknives' more advanced ships are cutting through the Pueblo's galleasses and embark units, despite being fewer in number. To the northeast, Oke Owinge looks like it may fall soon too. Pueblo has the better army here, for now, but damage has been done, and with so many mounted units in this shot, a snipe looks more than likely. Alegrete has been reclaimed by a valiant Tiwanaku unit, who will most likely die for the honor next turn. Factoring in zones of control and the landscape, retaking this city again would be a big ask for Justus, but not for Puni, whose reinforcements are making quick progress across the open terrain south of No Man's Land. Atacama has taken a token amount of damage, but a high defense score and rocky terrain may make this city a tougher nut to crack. In the north, Ecuador continues to throw flesh into the grinder. Gabriel Moreno has at least succeeded in drawing the bulk of the defending forces north, allowing his ally to continue to make progress on their own front. I'm sure he's chuffed with this result. Ooh, Pharaoh's focus time. Last time I was here, I pointed out that the Pharaohs looked a little precarious in the number 1 spot. The next power rankings dropped them down, and they have not yet made it back to the pinnacle since. Last episode, they adopted order, a wise move in that it temporarily sorted out their happiness issues. Unfortunately for Trondur Igotu, Iceland is once again full of barbarians. For any British readers, an Iceland full of barbarians this close to Christmas can only mean one thing. The 3 bird roasts have finally hit the freezers. On the cylinder, it would seem to be a sign that Trondur has already pissed away all the goodwill this ideology brought to his citizens. Whilst the Pharaohs remain a superpower, I wouldn't like to be on the receiving end of a coalition war declaration from the autocratic powers, especially if my troops weren't fighting at full strength. To try and combat this wave of dissent, Trondur recruits Louis Lumière. This early cinematographer created what were probably the first moving films. His current assignment is to go to Greenland and make movies of the tranquil and simple lives of the people there in order to quash the rumors of misrule circulating through the empire. As I already talked about the island infestation on the last slide, I will examine instead the rare sighting of an aqua sheep. In the cylinder, these are generated by the Pharaoh's UB, the Seomaur. This creates 2 sheep resources near to the city, as well as adding yields to edible resources. This city being an island, the game has placed the sheep in the sea. Fans of the Worms franchise will know that aqua sheep are especially powerful during the late game, as unlike their flying counterparts, the super sheep, they are able to navigate through water, allowing them to reach otherwise inaccessible parts of the map. Putting their aqua sheep to good use, the Pharaohs are able to conquer the island city of Rhakopolis. Presumably, due to unhappiness, they burn it. This isn't how you win the game, Trondur. You need to keep your conquests to use as forward bases and resupply points for further attacks. The Visigoths may be able to contend this city and flip it back like they have with Emerita, but as with the mainland, so with the island. The melee units are few and far between. If the attackers keep the pressure up, Leovigild's fortress may be about to fall down around him. The Latvian landgrabber-in-chief Carlus Ulmanis issues orders to his generals. We must make a path through the anarchist lands that will give us access to the Mediterranean. The generals erect fortifications that bring them to the border of the Pontic state. They call this valley the Black Corridor. It is intended to serve as a staging point for a breakout of Europe. Carlus smiles to himself when news of the project's completion reaches him. Good, he thinks. Now we don't have to risk any more humiliating wars with that madman Machno. Pontus seizes control of Damietta for what must be the last time. The only remaining defender is a heavily outnumbered and outgunned composite bowman who couldn't recapture the city for a turn if he wanted to. This is a mixed blessing for Pontus. It opens the door to meaningful wars with the underperforming Sabah Emmet or the underdeveloped Kanem Bornu, and it gives new angles of attack against Rome and the Sarmatians. The other side of the coin is that they will have incurred a heavy warmongering penalty twice, souring relations with any nation that was not part of the movement to end Mamluk. Latvia opening the Black Corridor in the previous slide also gives them a powerful new neighbor to worry about. As Shadr al-Dur makes her way to the Great Sub in the south, she reflects that she could have had a worse run of it. Sure, she messed up royally by refusing to settle for far too long, then going on a spree that drew the ire of more powerful neighbors. Despite this, her civilization held on longer than some who were esteemed far above her, first through a stronger than expected defense in a coalition war, which eventually reduced her to a rump, and then in quiet irrelevance in a mountain stronghold until the day an enemy discovered weapons so powerful they could not be withstood. Still, she saw many great things in her time, and in the end her defeat was fairly swift and hardly cruel. Now, to better illustrate my earlier point about the Pharaohs being on thin ice, we see the map of world ideologies. The Pharaohs' only ideological ally is the Iko Iki, and they are too far away and far too weak to be a serious partner in any coalition. Singapore remains unmoved on matters of politics. Now we get to see the silly names our immortals have given themselves. My general disdain for authority and self-aggrandizement make these a particularly funny read for me. As far as I know, they are here mainly for flavor and don't offer any inherent effects. As such, they are just window dressing in a world that has been consumed by authoritarianism. In the background, Nungar and Zhang make peace with Nivkh. Aguebana II can't help but rub it in, declaring himself Demarch of Florida. A quick search tells me that this is a Greek title, historically meaning chief, and now roughly equivalent to mayor. King Muhammad of Bukhara announces that he is first citizen of his state. If Kazan has anything to say about it, he'll be the last, too. The fact that Johann Moritz sees his empire as a despotic horde may explain the outdated tactics employed in his most recent war, and also why he was so keen to recruit that artist who made horse movies in my last episode. Studying history, I've come across some pretty spurious claims to the inheritance of the Roman Empire, but I can safely say without opening a single book, Praetor Umu, you're having a laugh, mate. On the sub, they practice a form of direct democracy, where all are allowed a say on what music is played and where they order their takeaway from. There are no official factions, but since Gregor McGregor showed up, a lot of people have started to vote in blocks. This is solely to avoid having haggis for dinner whilst listening to the Best of the Bagpipes Volume 17 on repeat. Screw you guys, haggis is awesome. Banpo falls to the vicious and viscous Gogurt wave. It looks like Machanga and Erleto are next on the hit list, and why not? There's gold in them thar hills, and marble, and perfume, and citrus. Ecuador, frustrated at their lack of progress against Tiwanaku, declare war with the Alawites. I'm sure this will restore their tarnished reputation. Turns out Ecuador aren't alone in their war against the Alawites. Joined by Latvia, this coalition is going nowhere fast. A more fruitful campaign is being waged by Kazan against the Bukharan exclave Pavlodar. The city is taking gradual damage, and without means of reinforcement, the attacking army is powerful enough to get the job done. Crossing through the mountain pass to the south of the city, Kazan troops notice posters offering a large reward for the delivery of a smelly monk known as Grigori, and/or any missing Makhnovian troops back to Huliapol. They are stuck to the walls of dwellings, barns, mountains, and over road signs. The soldiers spit at them as they pass, awarding points when they hit the dark and commanding eyes of Rasputin. Latvia recruits the great engineer Raymond Loewy. This French-born expert in the design of logos, packaging, and vehicle interiors has been drafted by Carlos Ulmanis to design a new logo for the autocratic empire of Latvia. He hopes a snazzy rebrand will draw attention away from the fact that he hasn't done all that much in a while. Big Bend is down to the black. A pair of privateers are being blocked by the Eswatini Navy. The city is so heavily surrounded by ranged units that they are currently the only units capable of capturing it. Anna Nzinga must be living out her own stick-in-the-spokes meme, but it can only last so long, and is not a viable defensive strategy for Labotsibeni Mdulu. With Damietta firmly in Pontic hands, the Seljuk, Afsharids, Bukhara, Makhnovia, and Pontus himself all make peace with the former state of Egypt. Sabah Emet joins in on the love train and makes peace with Kalmyk. At first glance, this slide looks really bad for Bora Bora, who have a very large naval presence at their borders and not much to back it up in the core. Half of these ships, however, belong to Singapore, who aren't at war with Bora Bora. Palawa are, but their boats are a couple of generations behind most of the others in the shot, and a full 3 behind the Wagi destroyers that can be seen top left. Also artillery. Fear the Wagi. Speaking of game-changing units, since we last saw this front, the Yellowknives have conjured up no fewer than 12 planes. They have used said to bring Pahoa El Guingue down to the black and send in ships to secure its capture. Pueblo have managed to hold Oke Owinge, and there are fewer Yellowknife troops on this front. Unfortunately, the defenders are few and weary. They cannot withstand the bombs and bullets that are now raining down death upon them. Having seen the ongoing ineffectiveness of the tactic when employed by his ally Gabriel Moreno, Puni decides he is not bothered if Eustace wishes to charge a few horses at Alegrete. He has ordered his troops to converge on the city of Pocotia along with Atacama, which is now down to deep yellow. Once captured, these cities will secure a clear-ish path to the self-titled Tiwanaku capital. In the city of Nancy, capital by default of the rump state of Burgundy, a technological breakthrough has led to the development of unique arms. The handgunner is stronger next to other units, especially cannon, and deals more damage to fortified defenders. Unfortunately for Burgundy, they are more likely to be the defenders rather than the attackers at this stage of the game. Plus, this unit is nowhere near as advanced as some of their neighbors' elite squads. Gogurio's navy may not be the most high-tech we've seen this episode, but it does form the largest complete carpet. It is not a good time to be Iko-Iki. Aboard the decks of a warship, recently repurposed as a luxury cruise liner, Scott Joplin plays a piano in the ragtime style he has come to typify. Osage makes peace with the Finns, Latvia, Saba de Emmet, Kazan, and Eswatini. None of these wars were especially relevant, but Pahuska is happy to have fewer plates to juggle. The Thule Navy, having sunk most of the Osage army whilst it was embarked, is now at the shores of Baaxuwa-Shaliko. The remaining Osage land forces are doing a valiant job of holding back the Yellowknives, but it cannot be stated often or loudly enough that Akaicho has an air force now. Kanembornu also gives up on taking Meknes. Without an angle of attack, they declare peace with the Alawites. Another ideology, another autocrat. The Pontic Corps isn't as full of units as it could be, and some of their formations are looking a little dated. Nothing like a total war economy to sort that little problem out. Expect these guys to get a bit scarier soon. In news that doesn't matter, Mongolia makes peace with Mogadishu. In Iberia, Leovigild is back in possession of all his cities. Stubborn bugger, I'll give him that, but I'm not sure it will save him in the long run. That difficult-to-type city from 3 slides ago has fallen to the Thule. I'm guessing the Yellowknives' 1st Airborne probably did most of the heavy lifting, but for Javraganak, a win is a win, and bulking out this exclave is definitely a win. Bavaria denounces Bukhara. Ink means little in this new world of oil and blood, and neither side is in a position to be making threats just now. Ludwig patronizes the artist Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot. His style, now considered dated by many, is perfect for capturing the true beauty of Renaissance Bavaria before it is transformed into an industrial powerhouse or a pile of rubble. The Bora Bora Wara Wara effort is going well. Puni's soldiers have secured Alegrete, which is healing, and have captured Pocotia. Atacama is in the red. It may have flipped already, and if it hasn't, it will do soon. The cities being attacked by Ecuador in the north are almost fully healed, despite waves of troops still pouring in. Bora Bora has managed to maneuver 2 rifle brigades to the south of Pucará. I desperately want them to pull off another hilarious snipe. Aforementioned city in North America is back in Osage hands, and even more amazingly, they have dealt significant damage to Chichuche. The Yellowknives have withdrawn some of their aircraft from the city in case of capture. They don't want this hard-won technology falling into the hands of a rival they had all but written off. The Pueblo army has also advanced into Yellowknives' occupied former Crow territory, but are yet to do any damage. Both of the Pueblo cities in shot are in the black, but safe from capture. Akaicho needs to be careful not to stack his forces too heavily with his new toys at the expense of ground units. The Immortals often make the mistake of focusing their bombing raids on cities and ignoring armies. This looks set to be the showdown that will decide who walks away with North American supremacy. Hold on to your hats, because this has all the hallmarks of a bumpy ride ahead. Pontus makes peace with the Ume Sami, presumably because no one could secure access to the newly constructed Black Corridor, which Latvia is guarding jealously. Taino and Palawa also make peace. That's nice. Back in South America, Bora Bora secure the city of Pocotia and managed to flip Atacama too. The latter may return to Hustis briefly before the war is over, but at this point it seems destined to end up with Puni. Bora Bora has begun annexing its conquests in order to churn out more units. This may be the beginning of the end. A block of European and steppe-based civs decide Bukhara isn't that bad after all, and make peace. Ludwig quickly drafts notes to the relevant embassies telling the ambassadors he was just joking when he called Muhammad Shaibani a Dumkov earlier this turn. The most notable of these peace accords is with Mohammedamin, and comes not a minute too soon. Kazani troops were on the verge of capturing the tempting exclave that lies between them and the Seljuk lands. As the peace bells ring out, enemy troops on either side of the border of Pavlodar sit and salivate at the thought of biting off that tasty snack. I'm just going to leave this slide as a spot the difference puzzle. At this point, there is no stopping Gogurt Wave. Soon it will cover all the former Shang lands and every ill-gotten luxury resource therein. This will, of course, lead to mixed results. Gogurt-covered citrus, probably okay. Gogurt-covered jade, however, may not make for the best jewelry. Osage draws blood. They seize the aerodrome of Chichuche from the Yellowknives. The long-term fate of this city is still up in the air, however, as there are Yellowknives and Pueblo detachments in the area looking to add this important prize to their respective empires. Akaicho may have orchestrated this as a distraction, however, as he seizes the canal city on the Great Lakes from Osage, granting much better access to their core. Sabed Emmet makes peace with Nivre. Whew, that was a close one. The Afsharids, having missed their opportunity to roll out both their UUs simultaneously, focus on the finer things, recruiting to court the musician Shinpei Nakayama. He composes songs that will become his civilization's proto-pop music. He is also commissioned by a sentimental Nader Shah to write music for children at court, that they might soothe him with their songs in times of trouble. Wagi also makes peace with Nivre. This wasn't a war that saw much action, but who wants even an outside chance of planes and destroyers turning up at their cities? Actual sigh of relief breathed by Umu. To celebrate this historic occurrence, we are treated to a shot of Mogadishu, who have a similar color scheme and symbol to Nivre. I assume this is to draw attention to the great pains narrators go through to make sure they haven't messed up any of the war or peace notifications in the sidebar. The fighting along the Pueblo coast has progressed south into what we know as the state of California, and even reaches down to Baja California. The Yellowknives are back in contested control of Chichuche, and the Pueblo are still unable to damage any of the former Crow cities. Both Hak-U and Oke-Owinge remain in the black. This is slowly becoming an uncomfortable watch. Bora Boran forces continue to overwhelm their Tiwanaku counterparts. The latter have regained control of Atacama, but it's dubious at best. At this point, the only thing Tiwanaku has going for them is the mountains. Even Ecuador is doing slightly better than when we last saw them. The Gogurt wave rolls over another Shang capital in exile as the government flees further south to a city that is already in open rebellion. Machang will offer scant resistance, despite having more willing defenders. A great musician makes his way from the deltas of the American South, where he has honed his style and reputation, to the lands of Taino. He hopes that he will resonate with the island people in these troubled times, surrounded as they are by muddy waters. Rome makes peace with Mogadishu. Another shot of Iberia, another inconclusive conquest. Leovigild recruits the Chinese general Ma Hushan. Hushan had some issues with the English on the Indian subcontinent, and as such, has brought his grudge to bear on the battlefield for the Visigoths. Hungary completed their carpet. Well done, Bathory. You are now the only state with a unit on every owned tile. Power rankers, take note. Cowed into submission, Ndongo makes peace with their terrifying foe. Machno, please, declare war. I want good things for you. Siam hasn't done anything for a while. I'd almost forgotten they existed. They'd almost forgotten they existed. Brahma had meditated beyond physical form and become detached from the world. He decided there was only one thing that could make him feel again: pain. He declares to the world that he adopts order. He taunts the autocratic forces to come and have a go if you think you're odd enough. Will the fall of Southeast Asia to the influence of order create a domino effect that will reach Europe? Highly doubtful. Unintimidated by Rama's posturing, Makeda chooses the path of autocracy. This is a good play for them. The bonus to internal trade routes from order is counterproductive to their UA, and their biggest weakness so far has been building units. Hopefully this will give them the impetus to do so. If it does, their next golden age may be the cylinder's next dark age. Having grown bored of their resource-intensive and centuries-long attempts to take the mainland and easily recaptured city of Emerita, the English Navy descends on the one-tile island of Rhocopolis and finds it much easier to attack. The one unit capable of a recapture is currently blocked from approach. Could we actually be seeing decisive progress on this front? The Pharaohs bring some Great War bombers of their own to North America, but like the Yellowknives, they lack the melee units necessary to capitalize on this sizable advantage. Still, if I was Seneca, I'd be sweating. A lathered horse lurches forward up the arid hill, strafing with supernatural accuracy to avoid the volleys being aimed at it. Its rider is heavily wounded, shot in the leg, shoulder, and back. He holds on, though. He can see the gates of Big Bend. They are ruins ahead of him. There's smoke in his eyes, there's horse spit from when he collapsed on his mount's neck but didn't let go, and globs of saliva flew from the furious creature's mouth. There is blood, some his own, some not. In his left eye there is a persistent sting of shrapnel. He ignores all of this and concentrates on holding on to his horse. The beast knows better than he does now. The gates are getting closer. He pulls himself up, roars away the pain in his shoulder, and hefts his gun. He aims briefly and prays long. He hears the strangled scream of the last defender as the ball punctures his throat. The horse gallops on, and he is inside the city. He has conquered Big Bend. The battle for North American hegemony rages on. The Yellowknives continue to lack melee units, but are dug in fast. Their superior arms and armor will buy them time in their positions, but they desperately need a fresh wave of ground troops, lest they fly too close to the sun and lose all. Shang managed to recapture their temporary capital of Erlito, and may hold it in the short term, as the Gogurt wave has largely passed, and cumbersome thing that it is, it needs a large turning circle. Machang holds on for now, but its capture is a case of when, not if. Status quo successfully disrupted. Thomas Peters declares an incredibly well-timed war against Leovigild. He is immediately in contention for Victoriacum, and could walk away with a whole lot more if he plays his cards right. The Visigoths are exhausted from fighting the English and the Odd Pharaoh. A neighboring civ with a decent navy joining this war was exactly what Leo didn't want to happen. Pirates are so much fun. Speaking of cashing in on the hard work of others, the Seljuk troops could stand the salivation no more. The bells of Pavlodar mocked them relentlessly, and they were ready to tear the inhabitants to pieces like hungry dogs. Vonya, hearing the pleas of his people for war, is more than happy to oblige. The stakes for Bukhara are higher than in the Kazan War, and we may soon be seeing an ascendant Seljuk army riding into the plains of Central Asia. They have recruited a man who knows a thing or two about horsepower to help them, Scottish engineer James Watt. Progress for the Yellowknives is swift in the east, and the city of Oraibi is added to their empire. In the extreme northeast, they've also reclaimed the city of Chichuche and seem to have thinned out the Pueblo expeditionary force. However, this front is far from stable, and there is everything to play for in the Midwest. It's a battle of the underdogs. This is likely going to be a make-or-break affair for one or both sides, as Vijayanagar declares war on the Karmatians. They lack a land border, so the initial skirmishes will be fought over the Arabian Sea. Karm has the numbers, but Vijay has the tech. Neither has the strength to go through the Afsharids, so this is an important last chance to break out of a weak starting location for both leaders. We've seen Vijayanagara overperform in these sorts of situations before. Could this be an ill omen for the Karmatian court? Leovigild flipped Rhacopolis off-screen. We returned to see it flip back, so really nothing has changed here, again. Even Sierra Leone hasn't done much to tip the scales. Cheers, Thomas, and after all the nice things I said about you. To be fair to the English, their units have started to clear the Pyrenees. A Singapore surprise attack on Hawaii scores big as they claim the island of Tia, with little resistance, and Tamaya looks to meet the same fate. Like Goguryeo before them, they have split their forces to attack multiple islands at once. Like Pueblo before, the Goguryeo lack the means to reinforce this area easily, as the islands of Japan separate the bulk of their navy from these remote holdings. I guess this is where those ships on the Bora Bora border were going, all those turns ago. The Pharaohs and Visigoths make peace. The minimap doesn't seem to suggest any cities were exchanged. Every dog has his day, and Pavlodar has certainly had its. The only thing denying Selkup troops total access is a group of Kazan peacekeepers who are spitting at posters of Rasputin. Wagi completes work on Cristo Redentor, or as I like to call it, Big Jesus. There will be no redemption for the enemies of the Wagi once these advanced gunnery units are unleashed on the battlefields. Bora Bora retakes Atacama once more. It may still flip again, but Bora Boran supremacy in the region is looking Mora likely by the turn. Ecuador decides to slightly refine their tactics by charging all their units at one city, namely Pariti, instead of 3 or 4. This has garnered better results, but still no capture. In a stark illustration of the futility of war, our intrepid Ndongo rider is now long dead. Eswatini are back in control of Big Bend, and once more a dearth of melee units may prove Ana Nzinga's undoing. The Eswatini navy appears to have pushed back the battle lines to the occupied city of Nlagano. So long as they can stop the privateers from breaking through, they stand a chance of holding on to their scant territory. Mbabane remains undamaged, and the attacking army is slowly dissolving. Maybe, if they can hold on long enough and kill enough attackers, they can sue for peace. Osage is in ascendancy in North America. They have seized enough territory that their core cities are more or less out of Great War bomber range. If they can peace out before any reprisals, this would be a massive win for them, and give them a chance to recarpet before the inevitable punishment war to come. Pueblo, on the other hand, are completely exhausted. Any Yellowknives losses to Osage, temporary or otherwise, are going to be massively mitigated by the fact that the Pueblo Corps is now theirs for the taking. Sierra Leone remembers how to do what pirates do best and devastate the oceans around them. They seize both the Visigoth islands and promptly torch them. This is still not a great idea, as they will no doubt end up with new and unwanted neighbors in short order. It is at least more excusable than what the Pharaohs did it, and I kind of enjoy the fact that after all this back and forth, no one gets to keep the cities. As predicted a few slides back, Singapore secures another island in the chain. The Goguryeo Navy is definitely having to take the long way around, and by the time they get to Hawaii, some of their islands will have started to heal, along with the ships that seized them. If this counterfleet arrives in dribs and drabs, the Singaporese flotilla can cut them down at leisure, supported by city bombards. This will certainly be an interesting one to watch develop. And after an action-packed sequence of slides, we slow the tempo down for the finale. Here we see the Bora Bora-Palawa border. Without the help of the Singapore ships now quickly conquering Hawaii, the Palawa galleasses couldn't withstand, and Bora Bora have pushed a little way into Palawa territory. But that's not the real focus of this shot, though. That's in the top left, a bit of foreshadowing, a cliffhanger, if you will. Wagi destroyers, cruisers, riflemen, and artillery all peek out of a dense purple mass in the corner. Who will the Wagi come for? Your guess is as good as mine, but no matter the target, they look unstoppable. So join us next time on the Civilization Battle Royale to find out if anyone can survive. Thank you, and goodbye.